Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting through all the noise to give you a clear, factual look at the Epstein files. We are going to break down exactly what they are, how they ended up becoming public, and the huge impact they've had, all based on the data we have from the files themselves.
So here's the game plan. We'll start with what these files actually are. Then we'll get into the political journey that brought them to light. After that, we'll take a peek at what's inside, talk about the big problems with their release, and finally, wrap up with the international consequences.
All right, let's just dive right in with that first point and get past all the headlines. What are the Epstein files, really?
You know, it's the question on everyone's mind, and the answer, well, it's a lot more complicated than just some simple list of names. We're talking about a massive digital archive. Essentially, when we say the files, we're talking about this huge collection of evidence that was gathered during the criminal cases against Epstein and his associates. And this includes, everything from his personal contact books and flight logs from his private planes to official court documents.
And the scale of this is, well, it's staggering. The files add up to over 300 gigabytes of data, and all of that is stored inside the FBI's Sentinel case management system.
To try and put that into perspective, in just one single data dump in January of 2026, the Department of Justice released over 3 million pages of these documents to the public.
And that release wasn't just a wall of text. No, it also included an incredible 180,000 images. So that really gives you a sense of just how comprehensive and, frankly, how graphic this material really is.
So, the big question is, how did this massive mountain of data ever actually see the light of day? Well, the answer is found in a pretty intense political battle. The whole journey really started with campaign promises during the 2024 election. Then, that was followed by this contentious memo from the DOJ in mid-2025 where they claimed no client list existed. Of course, that only added fuel to the fire of public pressure. And all that pressure led to the super-fast passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act in November 2025, with the first files being released just a month later.
And you really can't overstate how much political pressure there was. This was completely bipartisan. The bill to force the release passed the House with an almost unanimous vote, 427-1. Then it cleared the Senate unanimously on the exact same day.
Okay, so now we know how they were released. Let's get into the interesting part and explore what kinds of information were actually found inside this massive data dump.
The documents really give you this incredibly wide-ranging look into Epstein's entire world. We're seeing internal FBI investigation notes, diagrams that literally map out his inner circle, his detailed financial records and trust documents, and of course, thousands of personal emails, flight logs, photos, and videos.
So here's a really crucial point. While yes, a lot of public figures were mentioned frequently, the people with the absolute highest number of mentions were often the ones in his day-to-day orbit. His assistant, Leslie Groff, for example, shows up over 157,000 times, and his accountant and his lawyer, who are actually named co-executors of his estate, are also right up there at the top of the list.
But here's the thing. For all the effort that went into making these files public, the release itself was, frankly, a disaster, and it sparked widespread outrage over just how badly it failed. The main problem, and it was a huge one, was a critical failure in the redaction process. You know, redaction is supposed to be the thing that protects sensitive information, like the identities of victims. But in this case, it failed, catastrophically. And the flaw itself was, well, it was shockingly simple. In a lot of these PDF documents, the blacked-out text wasn't actually removed. So anyone could just highlight the black bar, copy the text, and then paste it somewhere else to reveal exactly what was supposed to be hidden.
This wasn't just some tech glitch either. It had devastating real-world consequences. The Department of Justice published dozens of nude photos with victims' faces clearly visible. One review found that at least 43 victims' full names were exposed, with some of those names appearing over 100 times. Even home addresses were made public, which led to a lawsuit that called it a historic violation of victim privacy.
Brad Edwards, an attorney who represents over 350 victims, said that his team had actually given the DOJ a list of names to protect, but the department failed to do even basic keyword searches. He called the result a complete disaster, saying there were, quote, literally thousands of mistakes.
And the impact of these files didn't stop at the U.S. border. It triggered high-profile resignations and kicked off brand-new government investigations all across the globe.
The fallout was swift. You had a national security advisor in Slovakia resign, Over in the UK, the prominent politician Peter Mandelson left his party and the House of Lords. A major scholarship had to be renamed after its namesake was implicated, and the chair of Sweden's UN Refugee Agency stepped down.
And the impact wasn't just about individual resignations. The files actually prompted official government action. At least 5 countries, including Turkey, Norway, and the UK, launched their own formal investigations based on what was revealed.
And this really brings us to the central conflict of this whole saga. You have the stated goal, which was full transparency and accountability for everybody involved. But the reality, well, the reality has been this deeply flawed process, with botched redactions and these ongoing arguments over how many millions of pages might still be hidden from the public.
So that's what we're left with, this final, crucial question. Even after one of the largest government document releases in history, the fundamental debate over secrecy, accountability, and justice in this case is very, very far from over.